Well, it's our 17th episode here in the Star Citizen podcast. Zel, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel great. I feel great, and I want to welcome everybody to the podcast. If it's morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be around the world, and we're glad to hear. We're glad to have you here.
We are glad to have you here, and I want to kind of warn you before you might. We're a little fired up tonight, aren't we, Zel?
Oh yeah, well, kind of explained to a lot of people is stuff that we were talking about last week and things that we were gonna see what a week did before we kind of got into it. And I'm not really sure that it's alleviated any fears that you may have had last week when we were talking about stuff, especially when it relates to the cargo refactor and things that are coming in 318.
Oh, well, I was biting my fingernails last week, but now my knees are knocking. I think that's absolutely the right way to say it. I mean, it's we got some roadmap roundup news tonight. We got a little bit to talk about with salvage with the SC Live. We've got a little bit of the ship showdown, and a lot of state of the game stuff. And and definitely, I know we're going to pivot back on that cargo refactor, but yeah, we are. We are. It's going to be an action-packed episode, and we are going to get rolling here. So, how about ship showdown, Zel? Zel and I, can I state for the record, we were both, man, the Carrick she just carried the day, huh? Holy smokes.
Yeah, she just barely squeaked it out. It was, last I looked, it was by, a couple hundred votes. And, yeah, it's a bummer, but, I know there's a lot of Carrick fans out there. A lot of Carrick fanboys. So.
Yeah, really. I mean, and just to make it, glaringly obvious, what Zel and I had both said is for some reason, if the meme factor carried the Pisces past the Mercury, that we really thought the meme wave would carry the Pisces all the way to champion. But if the Carrick and the Merc ended up against each other, we both called the Merc. Now, it was, I think, like Zel's saying, it's only a couple of hundred votes, but that actually really, I'll just say point blank, that actually really shocked me. I mean, I know the Carrick's a great ship. I really thought maybe going against the Mercury, it was not going to, it probably would have fallen short. So, I'll just say point blank, the Carrick's it's a heavyweight ship, and it definitely proved to be a heavyweight ship this time.
Oh, you got to kind of put it in this perspective or context. There was about 21,000 people that voted. So it was quite a lot of people that actually voted on this. And if you were to do the metrics, it almost split the community right down the middle of people that are in that Merc boat that really love the Mercury, and the people that all those big Carrick fanboys out there. So, just almost kind of split it straight down the middle. So, I guess I don't know what that tells you, but it was a close one.
It was a close one, and shout out to the winners, and shout out to the, obviously there's, some skins to be had there, not a ton of, not to make a terrible joke, not a ton of skin in the game for me in that particular situation, but some skins to be had, you know what I mean, which is kind of cool for, for the people who voted for the ship that they wanted.
Yeah, congratulations all.
Yeah. So, kind of dovetailing on that and moving on to the SC Live salvage. Really, of course, we'll say I did like the way that the Vulture looks. The laser, still not my favorite, but it actually had a pretty cool animation, at least effect on the laser. What did you think about the salvage overall?
Well, I know they said they still have, some work to do on VFX. Kind of liked the way they were going with, the way the beam for the scraping looked a lot better than, just that. I guess they were using that generic beam style, I guess, in the beginning just to kind of get it working. But I'm kind of liking the current direction of the VFX for how the beam looks. Looks a lot better than I thought. They said they still have a lot of work to do as it relates to that. So yeah, it kind of allayed, kind of made me feel better about it a little bit.
I will say, one thing that I thought was interesting was the reclaimer stuff, where they kind of said, hey, you're going to have a pilot, you have a couple of guys in the turrets, and maybe a couple other guys kind of managing the cargo. And that was interesting. They did show kind of the guy, it was kind of funny. They show the reclaimer landing on this pad. Of course, if you ever tried to bring a reclaimer down to one of those pads, you'll realize that, maybe...
Yeah, it doesn't sit on the pad. It really dwarfs even the big pad.
No, you had a really funny angle there, which made me chuckle a little, which is no big deal. But, they, of course, landed it, and they showed the guy kind of walking into the terminal, and I was hoping they were going to show, how, because it looked like, they made it, in their little montage there, made it look like they had quite a few boxes there. So, it's going to be really interesting. Here's one thing that, and it's so funny because I normally am not the guy who thinks like this, but I started thinking to myself, it's like, are people going to say, pull the reclaimer, just pull it outside the station, and then EVA over to, back to the station and grab a ship and just, can you call your own ships? And then hull strip them and then store them and call them again and hull strip them. Is there going to be kind of like what is that? What do they call that? A conga line type thing?
Yeah, conga line.
I don't know why that thought crossed my mind, but it did.
A few people have kind of brought this up out there, and I guess it's kind of a funny thing is what about if you're just sitting in your ship and some dude rolls up in a reclaimer, or some dude rolls up in a Volt? Actually, I think we mentioned this a couple of shows ago. Say you're just sitting there in your ship and a reclaimer rolls up and the big grabby hands grabs you. They just start stripping your ship.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, and listen, I like, what they're doing here when you're grabbing stuff and making cargo, it's cool. And they did talk about, the one thing I will say, Zel, early on he said that magic word, which is, those magic few words. He's like, you're going to come up to like a derelict, where there was a bunch of derelicts where there was a battle or something. It's like,
yeah, I caught that. Yeah, that was pretty good.
And I mean, and you and I have of course, a couple of times have alluded to that as something that we're very interested in, is that, that and so I understand this is the T10 of this, but, the tier 0 of it, it is going to be some, a little fun to kind of cruise around in the Vulture, or maybe multi-crew a bit in the Reclaimer and go out and find some of these things and strip them. Now, the only other thing that I'm kind of curious about is there's that what is that floating base outside of Daymar, like that old shipping base or whatever? Can you hull strip that? You know what I mean? Like little things like that, it makes me wonder. So I can imagine you and I kind of going all over the verge, like maybe using the Vultures as almost like a prospector to see what you can kind of get the lasers on, and then bringing it's like, and finding this giant chunk of metal and being like, this works.
Well, I think that's really, kind of brings up a lot of these points where some of these environmental space missions and, some other things that kind of got pushed. For later down the road. At least that's, some of those, I think those are related to some of those missions, but I'm still, I don't think we'll be able to go to, points of interest or, like the derelict crash sites and things like that and strip those. And maybe some of those hard points. And I think that station outside of Daymar, I think it's kind of a point of interest too. But I do see that in the future, and maybe Pyro, maybe a little bit further down the road, kind of see things like that pop up, around kind of a random spawn point for a lot of this stuff. And you'll be able to go out and strip it, because I know a lot of this stuff is supposed to be procedurally generated in the future for sure. So maybe we'll be able to get the strip like an abandoned space station or something in one of those far off systems, or if we have a big old battle, take out some big Vandal capital ships or something, and then you just roll out there and just strip them. So that'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, that part of it's going to be interesting. Just kind of going fishing, figuring out what you can kind of strip and what what you can kind of peel stuff apart. What I think that's going to be a little bit fun and kind of an interesting venture. Early in 318, you know what I mean? And so,
you look at the. Did you look at the front of the Vulture when they were, showing, panning around and things like that?
I did.
Showing those stripping heads coming out. Don't they look very similar to
mining heads?
Mining lasers for the prospect.
It almost looked like they were maybe placeholders. I mean, and maybe they're not. Maybe that's exactly what they are. They just, but they absolutely did look like very much like mining lasers for sure. And I thought it was interesting how, like, when you do kind of activate them, they do kind of come out on these little gimbals, exactly, type of thing. But I think the Vulture's an interesting ship. I do. I think it's, it's kind of got that construction yellow, a little bit of that rust on it. It looks kind of like an old excavator type, and it will be interesting to see. Here's the one question I have, so you're sitting there, and they didn't, they show a guy kind of taking a box and pushing it off into like a freelancer or something. But what they don't necessarily, it's like, are you going to need to go down there, like when it produces a box, and move it out of the way? Is it going to push, the next one out of the way?
On the Vulture?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good question. You see, when they were showing some of that footage for the Reclaimer, is, you brought up conga line earlier, is that, you definitely saw these guys in a conga line. One guy was using the tractor beam and, pushing it to another guy, and the other guy was, pushing it down the chute, and the guy in the cargo hold was moving it around. And I don't know if you noticed those, the size of those boxes for the Reclaimer.
It was like a force pack or something. Yeah.
Oh man, they were pretty big.
I did notice that.
Maybe a little bit bigger than those like 2 SCU boxes that we make. Or it may be the same, but they did look a little bit bigger.
They were bigger, and I mean they almost looked like they were like almost 8 SCU. It was an interesting size. You're absolutely right, and it, I was definitely interested in those for sure. And then as you can imagine, the screenshot that I was, where I really stopped was, they show them loading the boxes into like where the cargo hold and where there's tons of cargo, and I was really looking forward.
What's funny is, we couldn't, for a long time, we couldn't even get down to that area because the elevator wasn't working. So we haven't even got to mess around inside the cargo hold yet.
That's interesting. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. And yeah, I mean, and they show it. It honestly looks like there must be, 5 50, 60 of those boxes. I mean, it's hard to guess or whatever, but it does show like there's quite a few of those boxes in there. It does make you wonder like how long, or how much hull stripping you're going to have to do to generate, that much stuff. How much atomizing is going to go on there?
Not exactly, right? So, is it going to be proportional to, the mass of the ship that you're stripping? If you're stripping something like a Hercules, I know it's just the outside skin. So how much of that surface area, once you strip it out, is what's that relate to in SEU?
Oh, that's
going to be interesting.
I wonder if it's going to be a bunch of 890 jumps in that conga line.
I tell you what, man, it's like the new age of piracy is not stealing your shit, man. It's just stripping your. I mean, it is like
chop shop mode.
Going to a bad neighborhood, stopping at a stoplight, and the next thing you know, you're on blocks. So.
Yeah, that is really funny, man. Yeah, so it's, if not anything, it's going to be fun. I think, first of all, you love the Reclaimer. And of course, I myself am a big fan of the whole salvage idea. So I think, if not, 318 doesn't necessarily do too much of anything, we'll definitely have some fun with that.
Yeah. Another thing too is I'd like to know, well, what's scrap sell for right now? It's about $1 an SCU?
Is that what they're making, is scrap?
Yeah, I mean that's basically what it is.
I thought this was like some other, like the repair material.
Well, it's whatever they whatever they claim.
Because they had a name for it, right? Like they
used a term for it, and
like an acronym, which was basically like repair goo. It wasn't that, but that's what they meant.
But we know that it's going to be. We know that it's going to be sellable in its raw form. We know that it's also going to be refinable. I don't know if you'll be able to take it to like Arkel 1 refinery or something like that, or if it's going to be something that's going to be used in the Expanse. We did see them doing a little bit of repair work. I know that they have a lot of VFX stuff to finish, but that one didn't look quite baked yet either. It was just sort of like they were using like a black line. Some sort of and what I'd like to see is basically the metal kind of weaving itself back together, some sort of animation where it actually looks like it's being woven back together in a way, or instead of just kind of like being there. And is it gonna look like one of those things where I took like a mud pie and just kind of like filled in the holes with spackle or something, or is it gonna give it more of a smooth appearance, or whatever the case may be? So
the other thing, I don't know this, I'm just kind of, the other thing in the UI that caught my eye was like they like when they're using the Vulture, it says like Abrade Scraper, the Cinch Scraper module, and the Trawler Scraper. So it does make me wonder if there's going to be some kind of add-on things, or just like there are mining consumables, are there...
Oh, yeah.
What I mean? Is there something more to it that they haven't really kind of said yet that's part of it?
That head did look like it, with it being very similar, if not exactly, and it's not quite like CIG to repurpose things, since they're basically scratch building all this stuff. But it did look straight up like a mining head, and it also had, those little spots where the modules would fit in. So, Most definitely are going to have modules. I think pretty sure about that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what all they have planned for it. Because I'm quite sure you'll be able to change out those scraping heads and and maybe other components that you can add to the ship that make it more efficient, or whatever the case may be. It's like you get more, with some of those modules, you get more material out of what you're scraping or something.
Yeah, well, it's going to, yes, or they're going to be, they're more efficient, or maybe they have a wider area. You know what I mean?
It's
hard
definitely
to say.
be able to change that beam pattern to where, it's probably where you can make it more direct or more broad, where you can, scrape a larger surface area.
And also, I mean, it makes you wonder is like maybe there'll be two, like if you bring in two vultures and one guy's got cutters on there and the other guy's got salvage thing,
that's another thing too, is
what I'm
that,
saying?
doesn't it have, it's kind of a dual mode, sort of like the difference between when you're mining and when you're extracting.
Yes, exactly.
So when you go into that other mode, it's a cutting mode where you're actually cutting the pieces up and then drawing them in. It goes into that magnetic, those two magnetic arms that brings that stuff in and where it gets crunched up.
We've seen something, right, where it looked like they were trying to kind of make like ship sections, like in almost natural cutting points on ships, where you could pull them apart. I mean, I'm sure eventually they'll probably have it where it's a little more.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're working on that with the damage map.
Yes, exactly. Kind of like
with the rest of the stuff,
like the ship meshes or whatever, the natural points where you pull them apart.
Yeah, they're probably going to have those segment pieces but I don't know, man. In a way, it would be kind of cool. I don't know if they're going to go that route where they're we're going to break the frame down into segments where it's like, oh, we kind of cut it here and it always breaks at that one point. Or if it's going to be a little bit more strategic where, you actually do cut through the hull at wherever you put that beam at, and it just starts cutting chunks off of it.
Well, and the one thing I will say is, I mean, you've got to imagine there's coolant lines and all sorts of crap that go through these ships. Yeah. Maybe there's things you learn. It's like you don't want to cut it there. That can cause some kind of a reaction. Explosion. Yes.
Where it's what was that game that came out on Steam? Oh shoot.
Shipbreaker Hard Space.
Yeah, Shipbreaker Hard Space.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's where it's kind of a mini game within itself. It's like you don't cut these line, this line, you don't cut this line, and
you learn kind of the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's if they kind of do it, in a more kind of complex way than say Shipbreakers did it, then it's going to be pretty compelling gameplay.
I would agree, because then you would have to have kind of an intricate knowledge of the ships, and there's lots of them. You know what I mean? So you happen to know, if you're a young, kind of salvager, you might just kind of do it one way. But if you happen to be, like an old school vet, you kind of know the best places to kind of cut, and and maybe because of your precision in cutting, you're salvaging more componentry or whatever, or higher tier components out of it instead of just scrap. Maybe they have different levels of scrap, so it's like this is wire harnesses or something. You know what I mean? That type of thing. You don't really know. Where exactly it will go eventually. I'm sure it's, once again, this is that tier 0 type thing. So it's, leave it to me to kind of go jump in the weeds and see if we can find some other things. But that would be really cool.
Oh, most definitely. It, it's one of those things that, it's kind of that risk reward skill factor, sort of like how mining is. If you overcharge a rock, you're going to blow up.
Yep, you cut the wrong place on the wrong ship, and you're going to lose a lot of your. It's just you're going to turn to mostly just low tier scrap.
Yep, and I would definitely love, and I'm sure they have a lot planned, but I'd definitely love to see something with a certain complexity to salvaging.
I agree with that 100%.
Being able to cut here and don't cut this. You're going to have to. We know that there's going to be certain things, because from stuff they talked about in the past, where you're going to have, like with a reclaimer, it has drones on it, and you're probably going to have a crew that's EVA'd out that go out there and flick those switches and turn those valves off for those lines that may be combustible, or make sure that they shut down the power, some sort of how they cut the power to certain areas. So
yeah, I mean,
where the reactor doesn't go critical and explode.
Yeah, so. It's so funny. Zel and I have been starting to deep dive into the progress tractor a little more. Not a tremendous amount, but we were really kind of, it's so funny. It seems like we were looking at a couple different ships and a couple different pieces of tech, and it kind of when they finished up a couple of nights ago, and I did read, with the cutting, with the handheld cutters, like you're saying, your teams are going to EVA out. Potentially, they're going to cut their way into ships. There's going to be cutter. A handheld cutter at some point you're going to be able to put, with the shields are down or something, you're going to be able to just cut a square into a ship and go in there. And that's
going to be awesome to be able to
be fantastic.
And I hope it's one of those things where it's a dynamic thing where doesn't matter where you walk up to the hull, and you can go cut a big circle in that thing, right?
Exactly. And just kind of work your way in, and then of course, like you said, then maybe there are some things that you have to shut down in order to then start the cutting up of the whole ship, type of thing. We don't know how complex it's going to get. We certainly don't know. So it definitely will be interesting. The deliverables part of the progress tracker is actually kind of mind-blowing if you start looking at it really closely. That was cutting tier 2, right? All back-end tech tasks related to updating the cutting feature for the multi-tool that will be used in future locations and mission updates. Continued development of the existing multi-tool technology will allow players to cut through specific objects. This will primarily include the ability to free-form cut on specific surfaces. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Free-form cut. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Free-form cut. Yeah, man. So anyways, yeah, salvage is, it is just the tier 0 part of it, but, you have the vulture, the reclaimer's going to get some use now. You're going to be creating at least some scrap or some kind of, and maybe the repair stuff, the repair goo is just specifically for the handheld tool. I don't necessarily know.
Well, here's the thing. Here's something that's kind of interesting that they kind of broke down, is that it says, and by the way, we couldn't think of what it was called, but it's called recycled material composite.
Ah, yes.
But it says the reclaimer automatically fills boxes of RMC, or recycled material composite, which can be stacked in the cargo grids and sold. But it doesn't say that about the vulture. So is it going to be kind of, and I know that they've talked about the things that the vulture can scrape is stuff that goes into your backpack and you can use to repair. Is it going to be kind of two separate things, or is it one of those situations where it was written in this way and didn't include the vulture, but it does the same thing? Yeah,
it's a great question, and I my gut tells me it's all going to be all the same thing, but I would be happy if I was wrong about that.
No. Oh, it's gonna be pretty great.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this part of it.
Well, really what I'm looking forward to is a fully functioning, okay, let me walk that back here. A functioning, not fully functional, but a functioning reclaimer where I can use that back elevator, get into the cargo grid. Maybe the other, they fix the other elevators in the ship where I don't have to go up and down that ladder all the time. So, yeah, I'd like to see at least some things that work on the reclaimer. At least that's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, and just, having a crew aboard the reclaimer and doing something besides kind of, just flying around and shining the big light on things.
Which, we had a pretty good time doing that.
That's what I mean, just kind of, getting that thing. I mean, it flies like it looks, it does, so.
Oh, baby. She's a behemoth.
She is.
Yes, it takes a particular skill to learn how to fly the reclaimer. She's a cruel mistress.
She is a special girl, that's for sure in that regard. All right. Well, unless anything more about salvage?
Oh man, we could sit here and talk about salvage all night long.
I think we could. You're right.
I know we got to get rolling. It's going to be a kind of a shorter episode tonight.
It is a little bit shorter episode tonight. I, just kind of getting back into the wheelhouse of things, and I'm gonna go do a little prospecting tonight. Looking around to see if there's any hidden gems for mining Quantanium. Not expecting to find any, or even some rock manables, to be honest with you. But with that in mind, moving on a little bit, you and I had talked about kind of having this general chat a couple of nights ago about the state of the game. And what is funny is, like Star Citizen always has kind of this habit of doing, the roadmap roundup kind of shook that up a little bit. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about the roadmap roundup before we kind of dive into the thing that's kind of got us kind of scratching our chin a little bit.
Well, that's the thing. Maybe you should preface it, the conversation with what we were talking about and what started raising suspicions. And we'll kind of get into, at least my gut feeling is, I don't know if those are allayed yet or not, because how basically how a lot of this kind of plays out. But kind of
the original genesis of this, I think the original genesis of this, unless you feel differently, Zel, is the fact that you and I began to get kind of feeling a little bit like maybe the cargo refactor wasn't, it just hadn't been any kind of glimpses of it, and so that's kind of what began my whole, that kind of the thread that kind of pulled out to create this tapestry of this rest of this narrative. That's
the thing
that's
is,
kind of the thing that birthed this whole thing for me.
Yeah. So, and I guess, of course, this is just purely anecdotal, but they made a big deal about it right before 317. They talked about it a ton. The cargo refactor. Every time, there was an Inside Star Citizen, it's, hey man, we're going to talk about the cargo refactor. Talking about the cargo refactor. Anytime that things got brought up on, at the beginning of the week, they were going, yeah, we're getting ready for the cargo refactor for the 318. It seemed like that was the premier thing coming that, had to relate with persistent entity streaming and server meshing. And, as 317 kind of went on and got drug out for a long time, and, things, still wasn't fixed. There was still a lot of instability in the game. And then we started thinking about it. I was like, well, shoot. They haven't brought this up in quite a little while. I mean, they just basically kind of stopped talking about it. And they the bigger things that we started hearing about in 318 is just what we went over. Is it's almost like because yes, they brought up salvage, and yes, it was a big deal, but they put the cargo refactor to the forefront. And, the salvaging and stuff is like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, we also got salvaging coming. And it seems like they pivoted a little bit. And I guess that's, they started, hyping the salvage thing up more and stopped talking about the cargo refactor a little bit. So I think that's, if we were going into that tinfoil hat territory, we're like, well, does this mean anything? Are we missing something?
No, it's excellent. You're making an excellent point. And the one thing I want to say, I mean, if we allowed ourselves to think about the cargo refactor in the sense that it's really kind of no question persistent entity streaming is a core technology, but the cargo refactor, having these gridded cargo layers in ships, I liken that to almost like a brand new age of piracy. It's like all of a sudden anything that you have on that ship, that's stacked like that, people can take, or it's just, to me, it's a fundamental gameplay change. So, and you're absolutely right, Zel. I mean, during Freight Mate, during, the hull of a show, and these are the two ISCs about the hull A and the Argo raft, and in other situations, they discussed kind of this, external cargo and freight elevators and this type of thing. And now I didn't expect freight elevators, and looking at even the progress tracker, those are slated for down the road. But it was going to be kind of the 1.0, like the snap 2 grids and ships. And I'm not saying that's not coming, but I am saying that I haven't seen a glimpse of anything about that. And because of that, it kind of got, I started thinking about just the state of the game in general, and just the way that and it's so funny because even in the roadmap roundup, they use the term cadence. This year's gone kind of strange. And even if we revisit, of course you had 315 major game changes, but 316 is this patch out, you and I talked about it a little bit, but I remember playing 316.1, which I believe came out maybe around January. And it seemed like we played from that patch till Invictus, and I remember playing at least 30 days, if not longer, with never, the game was rock solid. I mean, you hardly, there was a huge period of time in 316.1 that or 316, that I did not experience 30Ks at all. Now, am I saying the game was perfect? No, heavens no. You know what I mean? But from a stability standpoint, they had made this huge effort to kind of do the 30K protection, and it was like, wow, they did it. The game is now stable. You can do cargo hauling, plus you have the 30K protection, but you didn't need the 30K protection because there were no more 30Ks, it seemed like. So, so 316 was great, but, they also are pretty early on in this year, they announced the huge, and what I think is really beginning to kind of lend itself towards this narrative, this huge split of taking the best teams and the best development resources and pushing them towards Squadron 42. And basically saying, hey, we're still gonna, teams are gonna be multi-role. They're still gonna work on the persistent universe. The PU is still gonna be worked on, but we really are gonna have this big push to finish Squadron 42. And pretty much right off the bat, I mean, if you go back and you look at 317, yes, there's a few things in there. It wasn't a huge patch with tons of stuff. But I felt like, and I think you probably did too, Zel, right around the time that Invictus came out, like if you were in doing any of the PTU testing, The elevators didn't seem to be working right. They were killing a lot of people. There was a lot of things that were not working that great in 3.17.1. But Invictus showed up, and it had to go, and out it came. And what were your thoughts on 3.17?
Oh, it was an S show. From the get.
Yeah. And before you riff on that a bit, can I just say, you're not going to find two guys who believe more in this project. We love Star Citizen. So I really want to make sure that I say that before we get into the rest of this, because we're probably going to say some things that you wouldn't normally hear from us tonight a little bit. I absolutely adore this project, but I felt like 3.17.1 was pushed a bit because of Invictus, and what came out of that was a lot of instability, an enormous amount of money exploits. The 3.17, it was unstable. There was a free fly events, Invictus, and people were duping things. I didn't, but I mean, apparently it became a thing because of the the wipe and all that. And then of course, we all know how of course your 3.17.2 was supposed to have a whole bunch of bug fixes, but they basically said kind of right before, it's like, we're not fixing all the bugs.
No. And, a lot of it may stabilize some things and broke other things, but it was kind of one of those things. They knew further out that a lot of the stuff that they're working on is supposed to be, fix some of these issues. So what are they? They're basically kicking the can down the road.
Yep.
Maybe we need to get into the notable changes for that's coming up for 3.18, and then we can kind of go into basically, the stuff that you want to get into about, allocating resources properly.
Yeah, it was, so you're absolutely right. I mean, so, we can take a step forward and then we'll pivot back. So, it's funny because Zel and I were talking about this on Tuesday night, kind of in preparation for, we always kind of chat, and sometimes we do the podcast Wednesday nights and sometimes we do it Thursday nights, depending on life. And we try and be consistent, but, quite honestly, my life has been fairly chocked full of, a lot of family obligations, and so it's been a little bit touch and go. But we had a really good session on Tuesday night, and we're just kind of discussing things that we want in the state of the game and kind of this type of thing. But here, it's so funny how Star Citizen, here is the roadmap roundup that got released yesterday. So we're speaking on the 13th. The roadmap roundup came out on the 14th, and today's the 15th. And, and Zel and I got to talking tonight, and it's a very interesting thing, how they're talking about, we expect the persistent entity streaming testing to be in the PTU for 2 to 3 months. But as, and I credit Zel 100% for this, he also said, in the very next sentence, they say, but our goal is to release 3.18 to the live servers in the first half of November. So, taking what they've already said, which is they expect to go to Eva Cati sometime at the end of September, you can't have 2 to 3 months of testing and also make that goal. And that's a really interesting, it's just a very interesting way for them to word this. And I know that they've been kind of on the bubble before for the way they word things, but this definitely had you scratching your head, Zel. I know it did.
I mean, it's two statements. Are they related? Yes. Does one relate to the other? No. Because, as it states, it says, as communicated in the last letter from the chairman, which happened back in May, we expect PES to remain in the PTU for 2 to 3 months for robust testing. And, basically that's what we've been, we've talked about this for a while now. We knew that was going to be a thing. That's why, That's why, when 317 became such a shit show, and they were supposed to start, at least I think their idea was to start Evocati in August. And when that didn't pan out, we started going, well, some stuff's going to start getting pushed. I mean, we did an episode talking about what's not going to make it in the push. And this is all kind of related. We've, for the past couple of weeks, we've, are basically iterating on what we talked about already. So for me, I mean, we know what it means, right? But to me, I don't think the statement should have even been made. It was something that Chris Roberts said, back in May. Things have changed since then. And I guess they knew that it was going to take, quite a little while to probably work some of the details out. That's why they set it up with the 2 to 3 months of full robust testing. So they're putting that exclamation into it. But, then they came out and this is entirely different statement. To me, is that our current goal is to release in 318 to the live servers in the first half of November. And that's a month and a half away. Once they start it, and I think it was like September 25th or 6th or something like that they said that they're probably going to start. So, the last half of September. So we're just looking at October, to the first half of November. So, that's a month and a half. Now, we talked about this, why, and maybe we're just kind of, maybe I'm just being pedantic about the whole thing, but why even bring the letter from the chairman up? I mean, what's the point?
I don't know. It's
why not? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, we knew we needed more time for this. It's going to be half baked or whatever the case may be. My thing is just not even to bring it up and just say, hey, by the way, man, we're currently on track for the first half of November. Isn't that awesome, guys? I mean, it's almost like, oh, well, we know we need this, but, oh, by the way, we're going to do this. So, I don't think this was communicated well. I think if they were just going to say, we're going to be doing this in the first half of November, just leave that whole bit out and just say, hey, what's awesome, guys? By the way, man, we're on schedule. Because that is definitely one thing that we talked about in the past. And, I knew that they were going to, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. I knew that they were going to push it no matter what to stay to their timeline for 4.0. And that's really what they're doing. Another thing too, they go down in here and they're, it's like, as PES and, other subsequent technologies. And they, put in their server meshing, which we really haven't heard a lot about server meshing. We've heard a lot about PES lately. But, are they going to try to release server meshing along with 318? Is it another one of those things that's like, these are the technologies we're working on, but we're only adding this technology for 318. So, that's a little, to me, that seems, or, maybe I'm reading it, this ambiguity that they added in the beginning with why they even bring the, letter of the chairman up. So, now I'm kind of like, looking at this in a different way, and it's like, well, are they even going to put, the subsequent technologies in? And then it says, we'll change the core of Star Citizen forever and provide a giant leap forward in realizing the vision. of what our shared universe is meant to be. And it's, it's no surprise that we have had a abnormal cadence this year. Remember Young Frankenstein?
Yeah.
And what's funny, guys, is I had my glasses off earlier, and I was sitting way back in my chair, and I was trying to read this, and I couldn't read that shit. And I was like, abnormal. He's like, abnormal. I was like, yeah, abnormal. But and then it is kind of going into trying to lessen the blow a little bit with, we're being, we're glad and we're appreciative of all you guys' support, through the big push of these major milestones. So it's definitely one of those deals that, they're moving forward. And to even bring up the abnormal cadence, has things even been on time ever? So, the way I read it, and you may have a different interpretation, and you guys out there may have a different interpretation. And if you do, please let us know in the comments down below.
Absolutely.
So, my read is on it, man, they're pushing forward. And okay, fine. But, instead of putting all this other stuff into it, then say, hey man, we're moving forward with our plans. We were really working, because that's the whole deal with IAE this year. The push to 4.0. I mean, that's the big thing. And that's really what all this is about, is to get 318 out there before IAE. So they can talk about what their big push for 4.0 is. Do I think that the patch is going to be foobar? Probably. Yeah, maybe. We don't know. Maybe it comes off without a hitch, but we know that there's a lot of things that are kind of riding on this. And, persistent entity streaming is the biggie. I mean, we talked, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what's going to get pushed out of this patch. And, we'll go a little bit further into it, but another thing too is a lot of this stuff with 318 is also tied to IAE. So a lot of the stuff that they're going to be using for IAE is also going to be in this 318 patch. And it's wild to see that, the Corsair, I think there was a big push for it to get it done so it can go on sale again at IAE. So it's coming. We didn't know that. We thought it had a little bit more to go. As a matter of fact, I think when we were looking at some of that stuff on the tracker a while back, it said some of those things were rolling into November on getting the Corsair done. So,
yeah, the Corsair, of course, is an interesting thing, and you're right. I mean, I think, maybe they have some internal metrics that says the Corsair is going to do well, and they just want it out at IAE. Hard to say exactly.
Well, it will make a lot of people happy.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of people's been waiting for it, and I think it's cool, and I'm glad to see it coming. So,
yeah, and I really do like the asymmetric stuff. You know what I mean? I like it. I think it's going to be a great ship. I think it's an interesting size and shape. I think you and I were looking at it wasn't quite as. Well, it was an interesting size. I remember you and I were talking about kind of,
That's right. We
remember we were just talking about the Corsair Tuesday night.
Oh, that's the thing, man. Yeah. It's like when you talk about so many different ships, and it's like a lot of these metrics you remember and and you have an idea for it. But what was funny about this, guys, and we'll we'll let you in on a little bit, is that we both thought it was longer than what it is. I mean, we thought it was in that 80-meter range, right?
Isn't it like 55?
Is that a thing?
55 or 59 or something, right? It's not as long as we thought it was.
It actually kind of blew us away that we were like, oh man, no way we got that wrong. And because for some reason in our mind, man, we had built it up that it was, a little bit bigger than it was.
We had, for sure. So, I mean, of course you got the Corsair, and then they talked about, the Santoki. That's Santoki. That ship, you can almost see what they're up to here, right? So the Santoki, of course, they're going to have out for, Alien Week next year. Mm-hmm. And what's gotten pushed from, in order to make that happen is the Apollo and the Ranger. I
don't think they've got the tech completely sorted out for the Ranger just yet.
Well, that's true. I know there's the two-wheel tech. The one thing I will say though is that, I think this is a little bit of the thinning. Like, it really has become, and I hope that I'm wrong about this, but I'm really beginning to look at Squadron 42, and I'm really beginning to question the logic of having all of your best teams so feverishly working on that. And like we're beginning to see like 317. I truly believe, having been in the PTU before it was released, it had to come out for Invictus. It was rushed. It was unstable. That got them over their skis. And 317.1, I mean, and all of the, like I said, the exploits and bugs and that type of thing. In 317.2, if you remember, they spent a lot of time getting as many bug fixes as possible. It was late, which caused this delay on, like you were saying, we were thinking late August was when we were going to see Evocati for 318, which, if you're August 28th to September 28th to October 28th to somewhere in mid-November, there's your 2 to 3 months, that they're talking about in that statement, but they didn't. They were late because of that. So 317.1 was kind of broken when it came out. If we're just honest with ourselves, a lot of things were not working well. And then 318 is now, by all accounts, is at the very least is somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks behind schedule. And it's going to be interesting to see. I think your claim that they're gonna 318's coming before IAE, and I think you were saying it's going to be very interesting to see and obviously with the huge lift that the Herculean lift that persistent entity streaming is, and they've already talked about how they still got to work on kind of getting that to scale and a whole bunch of other things, and I'm sure it's it'll work one way in their environments, and I'm sure when they do release that, they probably are not wrong that they would need almost an entire quarter worth of testing to work out all the bugs. And if they don't have that, I mean, they're basically saying, we have about half as much time to release it. And knowing that they pushed 317 for Invictus means that they may push 318, just like you were saying. But if you also look forward, just really quickly, if you also look forward to the fact that, they've taken the Apollo, the Ranger, and some of this other stuff and pushed it aside, I think that there's a thinning going on of what's going with the PU, and the thing that drives me to play this game is the persistent universe. I know that there's a larger conversation about Squadron 42 that needs to be had, but I am beginning to think that they maybe, that we're beginning to definitely feel the effects of their A teams not necessarily being as involved in the persistent universe, and it's beginning to show some. The persistent universe timeline and stability and overall gameplay is definitely beginning to take some. It is definitely beginning to kind of show, right? It's regardless how you want to, as much as a glass is half full guy for Star Citizen as I am, I don't know how you can't take all your best resources and put them primarily to work on one thing and not have it affect the other.
Well, it's definitely, a problem with resource allocation. When you take, when you have some teams, they don't even have they may have one or two dedicated people for the PU, but for everybody else, and I'm sure it has got to be hard on these devs because, you're like, you look at whatever your progress is supposed to be for your month. You're looking at your workload. You're like, it's like some days you wake up and it's like, it's like, what am I working on today?
Right.
And, switching between, it's like switching between, different things, where you have to get back on something to put fire, because, because the thing is like on fire and you have to go start putting fires out and, you're getting pulled in all these different directions, and I get it, man. It's definitely one of the things of resource management and having enough resources to get a lot of these things done. It's like big push, everything's working on, everybody's working on Squadron 42, but hey, we got this stuff coming up. We know a lot of it's, really buggy right now and needs to be fixed, and so then we pull everybody to it. And I think that's, one of the reasons why, when they try to do a lot of these hot fixes for 317.2, it's like a couple of, they allocated a couple of guys and gals to work on that. And it just, a lot of the stuff couldn't be resolved. Maybe it was a lot, tech related, where it was game engine issues where they needed the engineers to get in there and fix some of that stuff. And, there's a lot of different things, but, this whole line of thinking got us to talking. And, we put forth the question: did they put the cart before the horse as it relates to Squadron 42? Out of all the people that have pledged this game, I'd say the bulk pledged the game for the persistent universe and not Squadron 42. Squadron 42, at least for me, and, I pledged the game back in 2015. I've been keeping up with the game for about a year and a half up to that point. And, the only thing on my mind was the persistent universe, was this huge, expansive sandbox to play around in. And Squadron 42 was just like, oh, yeah, cool. All right. And, to me, that was a secondary thing. I thought of Squadron 42 as a secondary thing. As the business model goals for CIG, I think CIG has played it up to where Squadron 42 is their main focus. It's what they want to do. They want to build these, build these narrative-driven games with this high fidelity. But for, I might be wrong. You guys let me know if I'm down in the comments below. But I'd say 90% of the player base, they pledged the game for the persistent universe and not for Squadron 42. And I think maybe that's where a little bit of the disconnect is, sort of. Where their focus is one thing and the larger player base focus is another. Do I want to see Squadron 42? Absolutely. I think it's going to be cool. Is that my primary focus? No. What about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, and you know from talking with me where I stand on this. I mean, Squadron 42 is, is it cool? Of course it is. It's great. I mean, but I think, when I'm playing the persistent universe, a lot of times, which I hate, listen, all of us are going to have different opinions about this. Some people may love Squadron 42. And if you do truly, that it is absolutely okay. I'm not here to tell anybody else's that their opinions, aren't valid. But my opinion is, when you're hiring Gillian Anderson and Mark Hamill and you're doing this huge narrative-driven single-player game, to be honest with you, I wonder if we had taken all those time, energy, and resources, where would we be at with the persistent universe? Because that's all I care about, too. I gotta be honest. Squadron 42 is not, at the end of the day, and I understand the legacy of Chris Roberts in these single-player games, and I absolutely adored, the old Chris Roberts games. I mean, I flew off the Tiger's Claw, man. I loved it. You know what I mean? I love those games, but honestly, having come from a couple of a couple of sandbox MMOs and having been on rails, I prefer the sandbox all day, every day. You give me the tools to make my own content. I think that's where it's at, and I would argue, and Zel, I don't know, if I know that you and I usually feel pretty closely about these things. I would argue that probably between 8 and 9 out of every $10 that Star Citizen has brought in, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I would argue that probably 80 or 90% of the money that's been brought in has been brought in because of the persistent universe, and it really seems like a very interesting thing to kind of pull and pool and coalesce so much resources on Squadron 42. They must think that's if they release Squadron 42 and it's got the same like super high fidelity and it's an awesome single player experience, that it's going to revolutionize gaming, and and they're going to have millions and millions and millions of purchases. They must be banking on that.
That's the thing, right?
I would argue that I would much, just really quickly, I would much rather see those resources put into the persistent universe. And I think if the two horses are racing against each other, to me, the persistent universe just, I don't even know that they'd have raised $25 million for Squadron 42. I hate to say that, but I think the vast majority of the money they've raised is for Star Citizen, and they've decided to take 90% of the resources, or 75% of the resources at least, and put them in the Squadron 42. And maybe, if we were to ever see the bottom line on both, like if we were to, maybe they've probably spent 7 out of 10, you've got the persistent universe at least making 7 out of 10 of the dollars, and the Squadron 42 taking 7 out of the $10.
Well, one of the things, and I know there are a lot of people out there going, but you don't see the bigger picture. I'm about to get into that. I get where they're going, and I understand, and I know what their big plans are. They want to turn CIG into a AAA game company. They want to make, the next iteration of Squadron 42. They want to, whatever that expansion is going to be. They also, because we know the story is broken up in all these different parts. And, we also know that they're wanting to make other games in the future. And I know a lot of this tech that they've been working on for the, past however many years for a lot of these tools, is, that's one of the big things, is for them to build other games and stuff with this tech. and hopefully we'll be able to get to see, see those guys making money, selling this tech to other game companies. A lot of these things that that they've figured out, especially when it relates to all their new server tech, because that is definitely something that we could see expanding just about every game is persistence in the server meshing, and then how things get the hierarchy of how the server does all its things. So I could see that being a big thing, and selling that technology as
Absolutely.
well. And I know that they're also looking to bring in a lot of the normies, because we're going to see Starfield, and depending on how it's received and things like that, and people are going to be looking for new things as it relates to like Squadron 42. And from what we've seen of like the fidelity and all these other stuff, yeah, I think Squadron 42 looks a lot better than Starfield, in my opinion. And look, and it's really, a narrative storyline. The game's on rails. I'm sure you'll get to do a lot of cool stuff and see a lot of cool things, and it's going to be a great setup for the persistent universe. And of course, you'll be able to, if you play through the story, you'll have a lot of accolades and stuff as you go into the persistent universe. But I think they're counting on, they're going to market it, and it's going to be, hey man, you like those old Bethesda games, you like those old BioWare games and things like that. Well, we got one a step beyond, above and beyond all that, and really kind of market it to all the normies out there, people that are not, really entrenched in these space games, like or in Star Citizen like we are. It's one of those things we kind of, it's a legacy. It might be, it may become a drinking game for a lot of our longtime listeners out there when we start bringing up, things like Star Wars Galaxies, these legacy games for us that go back, which we see Star Citizen, in that same vein. So, we know that that's what they're really working on. That was, I guess, Chris Roberts' priority, was to get Squadron 42 out, and then somehow also be working on the persistent universe at the same time, trying to get it up and running and rolling and all that jazz. And maybe I have it totally wrong. Maybe from what we've read and what I've heard, that their primary focus is getting Squadron 42 out. But maybe truly, their favorite, like Chris Roberts' favorite, maybe the persistent universe is. He sees it as what needs to get done before one the other gets done. But we as players, the outside folks, kind of trying to extrapolate and figure out what the heck is going on, and we kind of see it as, well, shoot, we think Squadron 42 is cool and all, but that's not why we spent, we were talking about this the other night, is the bulk of the people out there is like, where's the average starting range on the money that you spent on this game? It's like, is it $200 and above? Or how many people out there just bought the starter pack? Hey, if you guys have spent more than $200, let us know down in the comments below.
Yeah, that would, and if you're, obviously if you're embarrassed to say, like some of us, you don't have to, but, yeah, it is, we're very, I'm very interested to see, kind of I think I'm actually going to put a poll up on the Space Shorts channel. Is like, is it Squadron 42 for you, or is it the Persistent Universe? I'm curious. I mean, I have always felt like it's the Persistent Universe, and I am, but clearly, and I mean very clearly, and there can be some upside to it, of course. I mean, it's very important for me to say, I'm not against Squadron 42 at all. No, I really hope people don't necessarily misinterpret that. I mean, I think that there's some very cool things that Squadron 42 can offer. One of them is maybe a level of polish that maybe you wouldn't have gotten, out of the Persistent Universe. So, there is many things that CIG and Robert Space, there's many things they've done right. I mean, I love the fact that there's, you have your space simulator and your FPS simulator and the Persistent Universe. I did kind of dig the idea of Theaters of War, kind of like almost like a planet side type thing for, all those things seemed like they were kind of cool proving grounds for the code and proving grounds for types, all that stuff, though, I will say for me it was always about the Persistent Universe. And clearly, like I said, there's even if it's just, it may be that with Squadron 42, I mean, at the end of the day, there is only going to be a certain amount of bugs that need to be fixed. It's not open-ended. It's not the Persistent Universe. It's not an endless sandbox with endless systems and endless different types of universes and that type of thing. And always a different type of river system, or always a different type of atmosphere or biome, or always a different type of gravity or whatever. I mean, the Persistent Universe is exhaustively more complex so when you do have a single player game, it's a different animal to code than, say, something like the Persistent Universe. So, I mean, maybe they just want to have something of a finished product with Star Citizen, or maybe, like you said, maybe that's just how Chris Roberts operates, and it's been, his vision or whatever, and that's okay too. I really want to make sure I'm not against Squadron 42. I'm just super duper for the Persistent Universe. That's my jam.
Well, I guess at the very least we can keep our fingers crossed and hope that, because they're doing that big hiring push, and I think they're trying to hire 200 or 300 more people. And hey, if you guys are developers out, game developers out there, hey man, go to CIG. They need the help. But it'd be great to see, a little bit of a split on the resources, to where they're adding people that, and we're not really sure how far in development Squadron 42 is. Are we at the, hey, we're just finishing up missions phase and fixing bugs and polishing and all that jazz, and that's going to go on a little while. How near the end, how much light in the tunnel are they seeing before they can go, all right, let's start being able to split the group up a little bit more and add a little bit more love to the PU, and get it rolling and try to get on a pretty stable release, patch release period, and really try to get, because if it's an all hands on deck with Squadron 42, after it gets done and dusted, they put it in the can, and then they got to do their, go through their marketing phase, whatever. It's probably going to be a year of marketing. So, and hyping before they decide to release it, or, at least 8 months or so of getting it hyped up before they release it. Then everybody can go back to, working on the Persistent Universe. Now, how much of that? Okay, so we say Squadron 42 is done and dusted. They got it in the can. Now they got everybody working on the PU. A year goes by, they release the game. How far into that year or the next year are they going to have everybody cracking the persistent universe out before they go, oh, now it's time to work on the the second part of Squadron 42 of the however many part series kind of thing, or when are we going to start working on the expansion to Squadron 42 and then pull everybody off the persistent universe again? Or are they just gonna put their heads down, man, and get the PU done before they go back to doing expansions and stuff for Squadron 42? That would be that'd be one thing I'd want to know, because I know that the PU is gonna be this ever evolving thing. I know they're gonna be adding to it, and we expect it. We expect them to add to it, reiterate to it, add as things go on, add cool new things as we go. So I guess that's one of the questions is, when are we going to get to a point where it's in its release phase? How far down the road?
It's a great question. I mean, it's
in alpha for another 3 years.
Yeah.
Are we, are they going to, dust off their hands and go, all right, man, let's get this PTU done. And at least, get it into beta by, 2024 or something. So.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, let me ask you this, Zel.
It's a little dire.
Well, no, heavens, I mean, I think it's okay. Listen, you and I spend a ton of time being really glasses half full guys on the project. And I do think that there's been an honest to goodness questioning, like especially now, and especially now when they're starting to kind of say, yeah, we need a few months to do this right, but guess what? We only have a month and a half. We need 2 to 3 months of really hard testing here because this is crazy, but our goal is to do it in half that time, which is kind of what they said, you know what I mean? So it's okay for us to have some questions, especially in with the state of the game kind of being what it is right now. And by all accounts, it's better than it was in the earlier parts of 317, but I wouldn't say the game's in a great state right now. The community's in a bit of a the community's being the community, you know what I mean? I think it's in a bit of a lull, I think it's
certain malaise that's kind of going on right now.
A certain malaise. I don't disagree, you know what I mean? So it is interesting to me where things are at. And I think it's okay to allow ourselves to kind of, to ask some serious questions. We've earned the right. I think that we have absolutely been, very stalwart, glasses half full kind of Star Citizens. And, and it's definitely okay sometimes to stop and take a look at the project, as a whole and say, hey, because to me, this is kind of a watershed moment, right? We're going to learn fairly quickly here if Squadron 42, if they're going to make the kind of progress they want in Squadron 42, and I think we'll know at least by this time next year when Squadron 42, if not by this time next year, at least by IAE of next year when Squadron 42 is going to be released. When do you think, Zal, if you're to just kind of, just as we're trying to kind of, chat about this a little bit more and kind of button it up here at the end, when do you think we're going to see Squadron released?
Oh, dude. 2025? That's what I think. I think they've probably got another year or so to work on it. They're going to take, 8 months, year marketing, finish doing polishing. Yeah, that's what I see.
So you see late 2024, maybe early 2025.
Yep.
And if that's the case, I mean, it's very difficult for me, unless there's a significant portion of something that's in the hopper already. It really seems to me like where I was hoping more kind of first quarter pyro next year, not during the first quarter, but like by, more Invictus-ish, pyro. I'm beginning to think maybe, pyro may be not this IAE, but the next one. What do you think about that?
You're not thinking pyro is going to be until IAE of next year?
I have a hard time believing that it would be here sooner, knowing that they've got. I mean, I would imagine. I mean, unless they're going to have, just because they're putting in the persistent entity streaming, right? That doesn't automatically mean that server meshing is here. There's other things.
I know it, and those are the questions that we asked before,
right?
And we've looked at the progress tracker and everything, and one thing that they aren't saying, and we brought this up the other day, is, yeah, cool, we got persistent entity streaming, sweet, but we don't have server meshing,
right? So
things are only persistent as long as you're on that server. If something happens and the server fills up, and I know the thing is supposed to be set to where you go right back to the same server, but if you don't, then your shit isn't persistent anymore.
It is going to be interesting to have the tech for persistent entity streaming, but you don't actually have the server meshing, or kind of like, I know in the AWS GovCloud they have these availability zones, and I forget what Star Citizen has a similar concept for these regional type zone-ish type things, And it's not to say you can't cross those when the persistent entity streaming. And I know that some of it has to do with container streaming, but that's not what I'm talking about. There are, just kind of like there are kind of North American, European, there is going to be kind of some areas where unless you kind of go out of your way, you're normally going to log into the same one-ish, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, I guess, with, being able to raise the server caps on a lot of these servers now and being able to expand it a little bit more. Yeah, I don't know. My big question is, and we didn't even really get back to this, and I know we're running out of time, but I want people to think about this. Just like we said a little while ago, we're going to have to start cutting something for something. And to get persistent entity streaming out, and I know that Jake Acapello came out, is it today or yesterday? The question got asked is, which is, it's so funny, dude. I'm telling you, man, it's that 100th monkey thing. But, the question that we asked a couple of weeks ago that had been, that got us on this whole line of thinking to begin with. Are they going to kick the cargo refactor in favor of pushing what they have for 318 in November? We know that they're probably not going to, they're going to do whatever they can to expand and get PES to a degree where it's playable.
Yes.
And I think that's their main focus. And we know that, the cargo refactor, or at least physicalized cargo at the very least, has a lot to do with persistent entity streaming. So, can they get that worked out, or is it going to be one of those things? I don't know, man. It just, the way it got, the way that, on the Spectrum forums, the way it kind of was said is that, it's still on the tracker. It's still good to go. If it hadn't been pulled off the tracker, then it's still, slotted to roll. So are we going to see in a couple months, they're going to go, oh yeah, well, we couldn't get it to work and we're going to bump that.
Well, and here's the last thing I want to throw out there, and then we'll let we'll just kind of do our sign off and leave it with this. Maybe there's something that maybe persistent entity streaming and the cargo refactor are so at a very fabric level, are so intricately interlaced that one is coming with the other. But my gut tells me that because I have not seen a ship, like an image from ISC or from Star Citizen with them standing in the back of a cargo hold, kind of having cargo along one wall and cargo along another wall, and showing some guy with a handheld tractor beam pulling something off the top and snapping, unsnapping it and then snapping it onto the top of the other one. Something tells me it's not coming. And I understand if it's still on the progress tracker, it's still coming. Or if it's still on the release view, it's still coming until the day they take it off.
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of that same thing that, when we were going over the video, that little message that you sent me is where they were moving those cargo boxes around inside the reclaimer. And you're like, hey, it doesn't look like these are snapping.
Well, and also, if you look, there's none of that golden, you know what I mean? You don't see underneath that where it looks like it's the the cargo mesh. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It doesn't look like from a floor. Now, yes, like if you look at that last ISC video with the reclaimer, when they show that guy kind of moving those bigger boxes of the salvage goo or whatever. you know the acronym. I'll just continue to say salvage goo for fun. But no, it doesn't. You can see the boxes are kind of off center with each other. It looks kind of like they're not kind of stacked how I would envision them snapping on. They're a little off center, and maybe they allow it to do that or something in a snap on, but that's not how I would envision it. It doesn't necessarily mean that's not how it is, but
yeah, absolutely not. And but it's something to think about as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hey guys, this is what we sit around and think about this stuff all the time.
We do. We absolutely do. And so I want to say, I know I've got to get out of here, Zel. I just how much I really appreciated. We don't always get into the weeds in a way where we question what's going on. Over at Uncle Chris's house.
What? Yep. Uncle Chris.
Sometimes I don't know what's coming out. It just does. But no, I mean, that being said, guys, thank you for your time tonight. I can't tell you how much I am really enjoying, really feeling like I'm starting to kind of get back into the groove here a little bit, and it's great. And, Zel, I very much appreciated your perspectives on things tonight. And as always, I'm really looking forward to our next episodes.
Oh, yeah. Hold on a sec, man. Let me climb off this soapbox a bit. All right. All right. Well, guys, as always, man, we enjoy your company. We enjoy your comments. We saw a lot of people commenting this week, man. We love it. I know we got a little busy. Hey, if we hadn't responded to you, doesn't mean we haven't read them. That's for sure. So we know you guys are out there, and please, man, if any part of this video that you, or any part of this podcast that you listen to tonight, if you like what you've heard, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. And, for a lot of these questions that we ask, it's like, get down in the comments down below. Tell us how much money you guys, if you feel comfortable, I'm saying, how many people, we'll put it this way, how many people have spent over $200 on the game? Or, pledging. We'll say pledging. And, how many people feel like, some of these things that we talked about may come to fruition? Or, what do you guys feel? Or if the cargo refactor may be missing for 318. It was one of those things. Well, we just couldn't make it work. Got to go to 319. If any of those questions, put them down in the comments down below. We'd like to hear from you. And that being said, we'll see you next week on another Rock Runners Report.